Yeah, so that relates to basically our perception and focus. And it's really how these two players see the world. So, the sensor player um is kind of a dominant, again, perception, so how we're seeing everything. So essentially they are what we'll call the instruction manual people. They really like to know, if I do step 1 and I follow step 2, it's going to lead to step 3. So they really like to start from beginning to end, um, where intuitives work from a big picture back in. So intuitive players are like artists, where they'll kind of get a vision of what they want to create, and then they'll start to figure it out from there. So how that works with those players, the sensors really are better when they focus more in on, a specific part or piece of their swing, where they know, if I get this here, then the ball will go over this spot and it'll get to my target. Where intuitives are like, I need this ball to be a big fade and it's going to land by the target. And this is how I do it. So they kind of work from the end back, where sensors work from kind of more the beginning to the end, if that makes sense. So they got to control what they're doing to get the ball to do something and go there,
Yeah.
which is fascinating because it's totally against what sports psychology teaches. And yeah, that's essentially what about 80% of the population we found is more of the sensory player. Which is why, again, if you really do watch a lot of these tour players, and I was fortunate, I was just at the Valspar, I had a player get in, so I was up close with a lot of these guys watching them. um, Hardly any of them really spend a lot of time looking at the target. Like Xander wasn't out there, but just in the Masters, like, if you watch him, he's looking at the target for maybe a second for the 10 seconds he's over the ball. Justin Thomas, same thing. Justin Rose, same thing. Like, you watch them, you just don't see a lot of focus outward. You see a lot more attention to what they're doing, the rehearse and their takeaway move.
Yeah.
Um, so whether they know they're doing that or not, that's just typically how they are. Versus, again, Bubba Watson, who's, you watch him, he's typically focused out at the target the whole time when he's rehearsing. His eyes are always out here. DJ's kind of the same way. He's looking out at the target a lot, just to kind of see what the shape of the shot's looking like, and then rehearsing type thing. So, two different ways to get to the same goal. It's just,
Yeah.
our minds are wired for one or the other. When we do the opposite, it essentially induces a lot of stress and starts to break down, how we can move and things.
Because I think you said the 75 or 80% of people that are more that sensory way. I found that a huge number, surprisingly big. Is
Hmm.
that through how they've been sort of learning from a younger age, that they think that's the way to do it, and they've not had the experiences and maybe learning other ways from, target back?
No, I mean, essentially, these things are kind of hardwired in at birth,
Okay.
just like dexterity. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I think a high percentage, I saw it one time and I'm forgetting, I don't want to misquote it, but I mean, a high percentage of people are born right-handed versus left-handed. I mean, it's a pretty overwhelmingly number versus left-handed people. Um, it's kind of the same thing. So just
Yeah.
more people, like, extroverts are more dominant than introverts, and sensors are more dominant than intuitives. Um, Not to say that we don't use these other facets, but it's just, again, it's kind of like that right-handed or left-handed. It's like it's dominant or it's not. So people can learn to do it, is the thing. Like, I mean, most everybody's trained as a sensor. They're trained in positional steps and, pieces of the swing. So I feel like even some players who are dominantly intuitive learn to do that. But most of the intuitive players that come to us like really struggling are because they're, questioning so much of the swing and the parts and pieces, and it's just like the mind just doesn't process that for intuitive people. Whereas the opposite, if you take a sensor and you tell them, hey, just get target focus, and I actually have a ton of video where had the sensor players do this with focus band on, and they couldn't do it, they couldn't
Right.
perform. And just, hey, just keep your eyes up at the target and react, clear your thoughts and hit it. And they just feel so out of control and they don't know what to focus on. um
So I
and
think that was
they're
the
not in
sorry.
control.
I think that was a quite
What's that?
extreme example you had. I think one of the junior girls that you teach, or I mean a tour player that you teach, who I think you said something like hit the driving range,
Mhm.
and she struggled.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
might be
because
one
then
end of
it's
the spectrum,
essentially
but
that's, yeah, I mean, that's, so stuff, because I'm an intuitive, that's just the way my mind is wired. And so like Zen golf and books like that are always talk about big zones and, freeing up and all that stuff works so well for me as a player. So I started teaching that to everybody. So that was a really interesting concept to me, is, hey, you got tree line to tree line, just keep your focus out there and hit your draw or hit your fade. And I felt like I could do that with precision. Well, I started figuring out pretty quick that a lot of people felt very out of control. Like they were just seeing so many possibilities, but their possibilities are not good.
Right.
They start seeing that because it's not a developed function. They see it negative. They see it whereas the ball can't go. They don't see it as all these possibilities of great things happening. So sensors just in life, if they don't have that kind of the steps to accomplish something, they'll freak out. Because if they don't have the control to do that, then the results got to be doom and gloom because they have no control how to do that. Where intuitive players are always the ones kind of holding on to mistakes. Like the past is more of a stressor to them. So they'll be the ones stuck on, a three putt from 2 or 3 holes ago, and they just
Right.
can't let it go.
So just one final question, if you got the time, then,
Yeah.
to follow on from that. In terms of, because I'm quite big into developing, I work with like mainly a lot of elite juniors. I'm trying to incorporate or change people's mindsets, certainly from adults I teach as well, to try and encourage them to train better when they're outside the lesson. Because you leave a player for a lesson at whatever level, it could be, scratch to 28 handicap, and
Mhm.
how they train when they're not with you, if you don't keep an eye on it, is quite, it's not great. So I'm quite big into skill development and sort of teaching players how to train better when they're, away from the lesson. But how would those players, the sensory and the intuitive guys, differ in terms of how they might structure a 1 hour practice?
Yeah, and it can get a little deeper with different. So like I'm an ENFP, so I'm pretty much the person that bounces around the most type thing.
So before I
Um,
forget, where can I get more information about your these categories you had? Because I heard
Yeah,
it on
so
the
if you go to our website,
yeah,
mentalgolftype.com, you can take your own personal assessment. And essentially intuitives need to be off the range is really a blunt way to put it. Like I just would not let them because when they get on the range and they have too much time to get too technical, they usually get in trouble. Like the intuitive player is really good when they get on the course and are challenged. Throwing them in different situations, making them solve problems, and they enjoy that. The sensors are the ones who usually like to be out there a little more just with the robotic, just step by step, working on positions in the swing. I'm a firm believer though that any player shouldn't be working on the technical portion for more than 25% of their practice. Like I like to add a lot of variability in there.
yeah,
Really then start going through process and then have some scoreable games to kind of measure it. So it's like, bare bones of technique, then you add skill and ball control, then you get into like full process, like game mode, and then you test it. And if the test fails, then we go back to where do we need to build on.
perfect. Yeah,
That's just kind of been my philosophy. But so with the sensors, they're going to usually like that process a little bit more of going through the actual tactical steps because they like to know that things are proven. Um, so it's like if this is a proven concept, I know the system works, they're going to follow it to the T. Where an intuitive is just going to be the ones that they're bouncing off the walls. They want to go hit different shots and rip off huge fades and draws and, just kind of use their creativity a little bit more. So I try to just hone them in a little more of, get them around the short game area, hitting crazy shots and, try to get them away from just the basic, like linear, straight shot technique and more
yeah,
like, hey, let's go get creative, throw some sticks out there and learn to curve it around there, hit it under trees. Because essentially their swings, what I've always found, usually get really good when they can hit 3 or 4 draws in a row and 3 or 4 fades in a row. They can balance that out pretty quick. But they also play a lot better when they usually have some sort of shape to the shot. Not like they're over the course working it every way, but if they have a stock draw, because they just see in shapes and holes better than they do in parts. Where sensors are very good linear thinkers, so they know if their positions are well or whatever, they can hit it pretty linear at the pin, and they like to play with a little straighter ball flight. Again, not all of them, but
yeah.
that's a pretty good generality.
So how quick are you yourself at, rather than the player going through a test, at picking up where they might be a sensor, where they might be more intuitive? So
Well, I
you
mean,
meet
if
a player for
without
the first time,
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I just assess everybody before, just so I know I'm not guessing. But what you can really do is just have them hit 5 shots without looking at the target and focusing on a piece of their swing. 5 shots with keeping their eyes up and just defining a shape of the shot. So say, what shot can you hit? Let's focus on the target, kind of keep your eyes out there, and then see if you can hit that shot. And then 5, where it's just like not even looking at the target, maybe an intermediate target, but then just focus on one piece of your swing and hit it. And I mean, I've done that even just proving the players when they're kind of like, I'm in between. I'm like, you're not, but let's prove it, you know. And we'll just hit 5 shots in each and just really give it your best with each, you know, so you're not cheating the system.
Yeah.
But if you really set 5, just focusing on like something in your swing, you know, you can do, then you spend 5 just kind of focusing on the shot shape and, you know, keeping your eyes out. And I mean, you'll see it pretty darn quick. You'll see the rhythm change. You'll see just their attitude change, how the swing looks. So you can pin that down pretty quick by doing something like that.
Do you find the sensory guys ask a lot more questions as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're the like I gotta know it works type people. Intuitives will are a lot quicker to
Trust it maybe,
just
or
yeah, they just like new concepts. They love new ideas, you know, and that's why like a lot of the coaches we talk to are intuitives because they love the idea of oh, this is something new, something that can help, whether it is or not. Um, you know, they like that idea of new things, and I can tell you as myself, I mean, I've always been the one to go learn a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different things, and that was always exciting to me. Where you know, I came up under a coach who like is still doing the same short game school, the same format, the same timing 20 years later. And it just works for him and he knows it works for him. But it's like, you know, I just was always like, well, let's try this, let's do this, you know, let's do something new. And
yeah,
so it's just a different way. And that's usually why, you know, the coaches we do come across are intuitives because they're really fascinated by just new things, new ideas. Or there's a lot of coaches who just like, hey, this has always worked for me. This is the way I'm going to do it. And then that's totally fine as well. I just always like to know different things and new information and keep refining. You know, I hate to say it, but I think the intuitive player has a hard time in the game of golf, which is why we always see a few of the Bubba Watsons and players like that. And I think Dustin Johnson's probably an intuitive and Bryson's probably an intuitive, but I mean, I feel like it's a smaller population because of just how the training is and things like that. I think it gives them a hard chance. I mean, most of the players that come really struggling are intuitives that are just so locked into swing mechanics. Um, I don't see a lot of sensors coming in and being like, you know, I'm too technical. They just, you know, if they're coming in, they're usually just more worried about the future and failing type
right.
thing. Um,